Okay, how are we doing for sound now? That one should work. Great. All right. So this has already been a Mercury retrograde for the ages. I'll explain in a minute. But if you are, I'll just do the intro again. If you are watching this on the replay, there's a link below to the beginning of the sigils part. But for everyone else, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We have some New Year's, I don't know, errata, A or B to begin with before we jump into the sigils. And actually putting this together, I think we're going to do a separate, we'll do the chat because we need a Q&A to kick off the sigils a day project, but we need a Q&A to help with that. And then otherwise we're just going to do like a sigil 101. I'm going to do a sigils 101 video that like literally explains this is the art paper I use, which is underneath all this crap. And so on. So if you're watching this on the replay, link below to whatever we end up talking about when it comes to sigils. Holy shit, this has been a retrograde for the ages. Get to that in a minute. But Happy New Year. It's January 2nd here, 8 a.m. You can probably hear in my voice. There was some, what should we call it? Frivolities, I suppose, yesterday during the day. So I'm still not used to things like booze and shouting over music and so on. But also my first sigil went off and resulted in me staying up for like 4 hours. I had to get up in the middle of the night and rethink my whole Q1 plan. So love that for me, but like at least it's working. I don't know, kind of. We'll see. All right. Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. And I hope, yes, I hope yours was not as Mercury motherfucking retrograde as mine was. Goodness. Now, firstly, this is a Q&A live stream. So if you do have questions, I'm going to try and look at the chat as I talk and share things and we go through. But there is a Q&A at the end. And if you are listening to this, you won't get that. You'll have to come and watch the video. And that will also be linked up in the video description as well to jump to it. So yes, Q&A at the end. Secondly, this Mercury motherfucking retrograde, where to begin? So my editor's in the Philippines. His house almost burned down. Like literally I got across the canal from him. So, which has happened to him before. We kind of commiserated on fire near misses and not so near misses. But he was without internet for a very long time. So there is an intentions or setting intentions for 2024 video that I shot 3 times. That took 5 days to edit. That wouldn't go up. That the wrong one was sent up. Like I can't. It's just been. I am speechless with the potency of this retrograde and station. So consequently, I'm a bit behind in the videos that I need to get out there for the sigils a day project. So we'll probably film a separate 101, like I was saying. But there's enough videos now linked up below and in this to kind of get you started. Today, we will be doing almost like the conclusion of a New Year's process. So we did the reviewing 2023 about a month ago. There's a setting intentions video, which just came out a couple of days ago. Should have been a week ago, but not that I'm making someone else's fire about me. I would never do that. But it wasn't just that. It was the sound was wrong. They were like, I can't. Speechless. Anyway, so I want you to watch them. And today we're going to do some topic work. Beginning with, because it is the beginning of the year, New Year's intentions. And specifically intention areas. So I'm going to talk you through some of mine now that we've got the process of doing the review, setting the intentions and looking forward into the new year, so that you can use them as examples to break out into topic areas. Because one of the things that's come up in the Telegram group is like, 365 targets is a lot. Like you don't even know. You don't even know yet. And it's genuinely one of the reasons to do it, right? Like to open up that desiring, open up that throwing grappling hooks into the future in a way that is useful. So we're going to begin with that. And then we're going to do sigil construction. And then we're going to do a beginning activation exercise because like one of the things I want everyone to get, including myself, out of this exercise is experimenting with a wide range of different methods of activation and obviously briefer ones, and just to see which ones work, which ones don't, which ones you vibe with and so on. But the project is beginning, so I'll give you at least one to start with. And the general idea is anything that starts to work for me, I'm going to share as different videos and so on. Like something I just recorded with Greg Carlwood for the Higher Side Chats, and we were talking about this project. And he's like, that's going to be a lot of work. And I'm like, it's really not. Let me set your expectations from the beginning. This is not going to be a lot of work for me. I am not going to be doing a video a day explaining what I did with my sigil, how's that going. I'm not going to be answering detailed questions that are included in the course and the Telegram group. It's actually not going to be very much work for me at all. Let me manage your expectations there. You guys can share, you can, bounce ideas off each other and so on. But if there's stuff that's in the course, that's where you find it. If there's stuff that's more detailed, you can book a session. I'm going to share the stuff that I think is relevant for my project, and that's really all I expect from you as well. Let me just mute a sec and cough like an animal. Where is my mute? There it is. Alrighty, so some of my New Year's intention areas as examples. If you've already seen the 2024 video, that which is unacknowledged never grows. And that's why it's funny, like, because it maps to a sigil creation process. That's why there are 3 videos in the intention setting for the New Year approach. There's the looking backwards, then there's the intention setting itself, and then there's this one where we get some detail and look forward and turn it into target topic areas. Because I don't want you to be like, oh, I need to lose 20 pounds. I mean, you can do this January too, maybe. Lose 20 pounds of body fat. When you stop to think about it, that is a total health improvement area that could be a sigil a day. You will find a sigil a day in that. But it's more like, okay, cool, that's like, I'm good for like 20 sigils in there, finding the right personal trainer, blah, 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 So I want you to use my intention areas as examples to split out into 10 or 15 topic areas for your own. So when I look back at the stuff from last year that I am most proud of, the Foundations course is right up there. So that's the 6-month total beginning of an intro into magic course. I'm actually really happy with how that turned out. Improved video performance for premium members on the call. You'll be aware that the one time since 2019 that James and I tried to have a beach holiday, we got completely fucked over by Vimeo, may they burn in hell, and had to do an emergency video transfer from a clapped out casino in Port Vila in Vanuatu. And then my uncle died and we had to come home early. So that's the other reason my voice sounds like this. I'm running a little bit on fumes. But I'm actually very happy that we did that. So that's another one. Fortune's Fools is out in the world and sold out. I took a year off alcohol. You've seen that video as well. Pretty proud of that one. My development as a shamanic healer, that's come along in leaps and bounds. And I get up at 4 a.m. on client days, and I have a good couple of hours with my lineage spirits in the morning with the sun as it rises. And we're just vibing and deepening that process and being the sacred container for some long-term clients going through some powerful transformations is just like a privilege, as well as something that I'm very proud of. Whole food plant-based, that began, I guess, about almost 2 months ago. That's a key. In the same way I did no booze last year, I'm going to go a year whole food plant-based. And I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy with not just finding that, but thriving on it. I will do a separate video about that, because usually, and it's just generally because it's clickbait, but on YouTube, it's people going in the opposite direction, like 10-year vegan going carnivore. This isn't vegan, this is whole food plant-based, let me be clear. But yes, some of the learnings and the route by which I got there is fascinating. Anyway, realizing I am in community. Now, this is a weird one, but the couple of months in Paraguay, because it's the same time zone as New York, I was in approximately the same time zone as 90% of my friends, which is to say like Western Europe and North America, rather than like 10%, rather than the 10% of them that live in this little time zone. Because one of the things where you live somewhere remote, like I do, is you're like, do I have any friends? Like, I'm lonely. What's going on here? What the fuck is happening? Do I have any friends? It turns out I do. It's just that they are inconveniently timed from me. But that was one of the kind of core medicines of Paraguay. Like, oh shit, like there are still there are people that I can talk to. It's really fun, for instance, because at the moment it's evening in the UK. So if it gets to about 10:30, 11 in the morning, I think, oh, I want to ask Peter at Scarlet Imprint about something. And I'm like, well, he's going to be asleep. He's certainly not going to be checking his phone. So there's this 24-hour delay, like you're sending a telegram or something, which is in Paraguay, I'm like, oh shit, I'll just ask him. And boom, I would get a response. That was really fun. I haven't actually had that since I left London, which is coming up, which is 8 years ago this year. So that's a weird one to be proud of. But when you think about it from the perspective of a topic area of like, oh, I think it's a weird one to suggest. I think interacting with humans and being in a friendship group is important to me. I will have to do some magic behind that because the conditions to achieve it are more challenging living in southern Tasmania. Pushing myself with adventures. So I had some strange ones last year, that's for sure. But climbing a sacred mountain with Filipino native healers, New Zealand through earthquakes and cyclones, Paraguayan hospitals. I like that stuff about my life. I like the adventuring. And as the conditions bend more towards world war in 2024, that's going to require some delicate magicking if I want the good adventure, which is climbing mountains in the Philippines, and not the bad adventure, which is Chinese amphibious invasion, right? Which, by the way, is not on the bingo card for this year, but as an example. Magically speaking, I would say the thing that yielded the most results for the effort put in 2023 was reframing, and I'm good at it now. Like I can basically put that on the shelf. I mean, I'm going to use it regularly, but I'm going to, let's say, yep, reframing, narrative magic, like reality dimension shifting on the shelf, done. You did a good job, right? And that from a magical perspective, there wasn't much in the way of outside of client sessions, which are effectively channeling, tracking, and so on. So there is spirit scrying. I guess I'm doing spirit scrying at least 8 times a day then, but not in the way you're thinking about it, not as much. Certainly not now that I'm up here in the Wizard Hut, the Shaman Shack. We still haven't settled on a name. Certainly not the kind of scrying that I would do more regularly where I had a blackout room down in the main house, get the spirit crystal, that kind of thing. So I haven't done as much of that in 2023. And I feel like 2024 might have more angel work. In fact, it definitely will. And so there might be some scrying back, but it's the sigil stuff, and it's where sigils and things like reframing meet. I would love to do, maybe it's a Q2 course, but I would love to do a course on like, OGs will understand this, safe magic. Magic from back in the 90s when it was just like Robert Anton Wilson reality tunnels and like fun, safe, when chaos magic was kind of absurd because it's almost like it didn't think magic was real. That's where you have the overlap between, well, let's say new thought techniques and the tire kicking magic light that was at the late 20th century. I don't think it's a full course. It might just be like a free video series or something, but I've been really sitting with nostalgia around that kind of fun magic, right? The world got a little bit too serious, and the Grimoire revival plugged us into some praxis that has obligations. So that's not something we're going to necessarily move back into, but I'm just having brief moments of nostalgia for it, right? So looking at the stuff going backwards, turning that into stuff that's going forwards for 2024, these are going to be some sources of my sigil statements. So whole food, plant-based alignment. When I began my heart healing journey, this is a whole separate video. I was talking to my spirit lineage, and I came out into the kitchen, and I said, they said seek refuge in the plants. And I thought they mean, which they did, replace your supplement regime with a whole plant version. So you shouldn't be having ascorbic acid, for instance, anyway, it's garbage. But use rose hips and so on instead. And they meant that, and I did that, and that worked. And they also meant ayahuasca and so on. but it's interesting. I think they meant this as well. So when I say it's a source of sigil targets, it's because I'm taking whole food plant-based in the direction of a dieta intentionally. Like, I'm going to explore the fullest implications of what they meant when they said seek refuge in the plants, because they meant it kind of in a Buddhist sense, like go deeper with this as a form of total medicine. So that's a personal I mean, some of that stuff will be shared as well, but that's a personal area of deeper, more than human exploration using daily sigils that I'm quite excited for. Fitness stuff, having gone through the autonomic healing journey and so on, cardio capacity, I would say, is my, like, I'm so far down this fitness journey that anytime I try to break it down into a subsection beyond total health, I get annoyed at myself. But by the same token, I would like to do a VO2 max test at the end of 2024 and see where I'm at. So, like, by the same token, there will be puny human tests that will be an indicator of whether the amount of attending upon something over the course of a year yielded results. So that's how I'm going to say that. But, like, we don't do modular bits versions of health around here. We haven't for years, right? The next one is play and happiness. I mentioned the friends thing. Due to my own childhood trauma patterns, I'm not good at play, like, really not. I'm good at having fun. I'm good at making fun for other people, but I can't sit down and do things the way my little brother plays war dollies, like Warhammer, all that kind of stuff. I used to do that as a kid, sort of, but never that much. And I'm not saying I'm getting into Warhammer. I cannot afford that at this point in time, where with inflation where it is. He's a dentist, he can afford it. But I don't know how to play properly. Like, if I sit down to play a board game, I start to think in the back of my head, there's literally 100 things I could or should be doing. And the target area there is those thoughts. Like, and they'll tell me things like, you need to study for exam, because it's like bringing up stuff from childhood. Like, what are you doing sitting there, quote unquote, wasting time, quote unquote, playing? And not being able to do that, that's like the next step in the autonomic healing, because they're plainly related. Like, I didn't have autonomic regulation because I wouldn't be able to switch into physical play joy mode. So that I'm kind of bundling under happiness / friends / play as topic areas, which will be addressed not just with sigils, obviously, but the good thing about this project is, well, now I've got 364, but 364 swings at the bat to have a shot at, okay, this has been uncovered, this memory has been uncovered, or this rabbit hole presents itself. So that's a topic area for me on a physical change perspective. And the next two aren't necessarily sigils, but they are transmuting stuff I am proud of and stuff I worked on in 2023 into progressively improving areas in 2024. And the first one is to fall back in love with culture. And I mean Western culture. And because we're fucked. I don't know how else to say it, but we are, in the last few years of a project that gets more and more ludicrous with each passing day, to the point that when it does collapse, it will be like, well, good, because you fucked that up. And that's just the story of this decade, right? Like, I mentioned it before, the West is ending the way Britney Spears gets out of a car. Like, we careen into ever-increasing absurdities as we dismiss the cornerstones of the things that made us a worthwhile place to live, with all its flaws, don't get me wrong. And then we get into World War III, which we lose because we start it and so on. It's a fucking mess. By the same token, I did a film degree. The 20th century in particular gave us some really good films around the world. And so I'm going to watch a film a week, because I watched maybe 7 films in 2023, half of which weren't great. 7. I used to, like, I have a film degree. I've worked on films, you know, but they're not, Just because everything now is the Marvels doesn't mean everything was the Marvels. And when I look at the list, I actually have it somewhere. Where is my film list? Let me show you what I did. I asked ChatGPT, film a year. I asked ChatGPT to act as a film historian or film lecturer and give me, there's a project, you're going to watch one film a week and for a whole year. And I laid it out. So in January, and it's cute that they call it the foundations, but it's actually a pretty good layout of the list. So Citizen Kane, Bicycle Thief, Seven Samurai, and so on. And in week one, you do like the cornerstone films. In week two, you do Golden Age Hollywood. So Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, Sunset Boulevard, Singing in the Rain. I'm not going to do that one. European classics. So The 400 Blows is one of my all-time favorite films. That was on my list anyway. Seven Samurai, I'll definitely watch again. Sunset Boulevard, honestly, maybe. I watched Casablanca recently, so I'm not going to do that one. But The Godfather, Taxi Driver, Chinatown, Clockwork Orange, and that's for like new Hollywood. There's Asian cinema, Latin American voices. They aren't great. Some of them are good films, but I can think of a bunch of other ones. But City of God, Y Tu Mama Tambien, and so on. Modern American classics, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption. Anyway, so my point is, ChatGPT came up with actually a pretty good fucking list. And I will use this as the base. I need more magic films in there because I was thinking, do I want to go by zodiacal sign? This is moving back into sigils. That's why I'm talking about it. Do I want to go by zodiacal sign? Like, oh, what is 4 Capricorn films? What is 4 Aquarius films? Well, kind of not, because the Aquarius films are going to be better. And Pisces, I can just fill with Pirates of the Caribbean, like without any other. So I'm like, no, that's not the right move for films, but this is a really good framework to start with. So I've got a little document. I use OneNote, and this is coming back to the sigils thing. I have a document called Sigils, where if you have an idea, and here's a tip for you, obviously, whatever, because usually your device is going to be with you, whatever your note-taking device is, don't do, which I do when I'm driving, turn the camera on and record yourself talking into the camera and then throw the phone back on the seat next to you. Write it down somewhere, because you'll hit a day where it's like, oh shit, I'm doing that sigil a day thing. What have I got in the backlog? So I have a backlog that's just called sigils, that are ideas you can come back to. I have that for film. So we've already started this project, but I'm going to watch Whale Rider this week. I haven't seen that in years. But there's like Eternal Sunshine, Adaptation. There's a bunch of films that I really enjoyed that I haven't seen in a very long time. And that's the overall idea behind this project of a film a day, is to remind myself as the West careens into a level of absurd collapse that historians will study with their mouth agape for centuries, just to remind yourself, oh, yeah, but Nosferatu's pretty good. Nosferatu's pretty good. Bridge Over the River Kwai, bit long, but not bad, etc., etc. I'm going to do that. I'm going to remind myself on a weekly basis. And also, yeah, why not? Why not do something that's like an enriching cultural project? All right, I've lost my place because everything's in different. Sigil a Day live stream. Cool. So here we are. What's the time? I need to make note of it. 25 minutes. So here we are, moving into Sigil a Day 2024 proper. And like, I've been experimenting with the hashtag. Hashtags don't really exist anymore, but I need to call it something, because I'm going to be mentioning it a bunch. So it has been a hashtag Sigil a Day 2024, because if we try to shorten it, it's sad 2024, which on the one hand I kind of like, but on the other hand, I'm like, wait a minute, we're doing like word magic. Maybe we shouldn't do sad 2024 as the hashtag. Anyway, welcome to sad 2024. I'll begin with the scope. I was saying to Greg when he mentioned this is going to be a lot of work, and I said at the top of this live stream, no, it isn't. Not for me. You guys are, I will help, and I'm in the chat and I'm responding to stuff. But if you ask specific questions that are covered in the Sigils course or elsewhere in the member material, something, or in a show that I've already done that is elsewhere, go and find it. Someone else will do it. This is not a teaching exercise. I don't want that. I already do that. This is for people that's horizontal, that includes myself in it, just sharing different magical successes, experimentations. It doesn't mean don't ask questions. It means ask questions of the group. Ask questions of yourself. Don't be like, hey, Gordon, is this how you do a sigil? That I won't even respond. All right. So in terms of scope, I will be doing a sigil a day, and I will be sharing stuff that I think is relevant, including cool things like, hey, this is starting to work, and I'll share it in that respect. But from the outset, let me manage expectations. This is not a course. This is certainly not a paid course. And one of the things that, the online expectations of this kind of stuff are very often insane. Like, so managing expectations there, and it's already happening. Like, if you look in the Telegram group, people are sharing their fucking really cool ideas, and that's what it's for. So ask the group. No one knows what's going to happen with this. I'm not being, usually when I do a course, it's because, so when we do the 72 walk or the Deccan walk, I do that first to make sure people don't blow up. And then I share that as a magical project in the members area. And then people can ask me questions because I actually kind of know what happens. With this, I don't know what happens. If you ask me stuff I don't know, I'll be like, I don't know. Like, speculate, guess, wildly think and imagine what it is that you want. That's the point. So to begin with, from the level of scope, that's what you get. Now, I'm going to do little videos on Twitter and in the Telegram group, and probably some big video updates on YouTube and the blog. And I'm on the one hand, I'm tempted to say, well, I'll do a month 1 update, a month 2 update, but it's not going to be like that, is it? You know how magic works. It's going to be, by Sigil 3, I have plainly won the lottery and don't need to do this anymore. So I will, send a goodbye message in the Telegram group and close the group. It's going to be more like that. It's going to be, this result from last week's Sigil bunch happened, that kind of thing. So there will be like bigger updates because this is a year-long magical project involving a couple hundred people. Some fun, cool shit's going to happen. Please do share your wins and, let's say, teachable losses with me, with the group, and so on as you go along with it, because I don't know what's going to happen. No one does. That's the fun bit. So that's the scope, right? That's what you get. That's what you're signing up for, is to experiment wildly, share what does and doesn't work, pose questions in a, hey, what if I do this, brainstormy way, not a student teacher way, because that's not the energy that we're bringing to this project. Topic areas. So obviously it's the topic areas that you are transmuting from 2023 into 2024 as a really good place to look, because that's the stuff you want to get done with your incarnation. That's how much money you want to make. That's relationships. That's health journeys. I would obviously begin there, right? Do the things that, or prioritize the stuff that in its arrival has the largest net contribution or uplift to your happiness and enjoyment of your incarnation. That one I leave up to you. So big topic areas. The other one is major transits. And I haven't worked out what I'm going to do with this, because I do have some doozies. Not as bad as last year, to be honest. But I do have some interesting, no, actually they are worse than last year. And I can't work out what I want to do with them. Like, obviously everyone has some good transits in their chart coming up. And usually I just wait and notice and see what they're going to pick up. But one of the things we have done historically is astrological remediation via sigils. So that can look like, if you think a particular transit, a particular opposition or a square is going to come into your life at an 11, or you don't want it to come in at an 11, see how you can bring it down to a 2. And you can use phrasing like that. Or you can use phrasing so that you can direct that energy to erupt in a more benign way in your life, so that your ballpoint pen runs out of ink rather than your printer blowing up. I'll leave that up to you, because you'll all have different transits, obviously, and different ways to explore. But those are the 2 infinite sources of stuff going on in your life. You can never not tell me that you can't think of an idea for a sigil. And also, that's the point. Like, you're supposed to be turning your life into 365 desire positions, But those 2 is where I would look first. The further with the Astro one, and I'm really looking forward to this because I run to some different calendars. You are walking home from work and it's like, oh shit, sigil a day. What sign is the moon in? Libra. All right, where's Libra in my house? 12th. Well, that's not any good. But do you know what I mean? Like you can either just do the moon in the sign, or what I have done historically is go, right. So it's in Taurus. That's good in and of itself. That's 7th for me. Yes. And kind of go moon, sign, house topic, sigil idea. That's another one that should be, if not infinitely fertile for you, then sufficiently fertile to fill some of the gaps with frog DNA. So that's another timing thing, but that works for any timing system. If you're doing a decan walk, if you're doing lunar mansions, any of that kind of stuff, there will always be in the grand sacred clock something that you can not just find a topic area with, but again, usual depending on the conditions that we're talking about. There might even be some universe oomph behind it. So there's some timing systems I've been kicking the tires on the last couple of years that I hope, actually this might be tomorrow's sigil, that I hope to have time to further incorporate into my life in 2024. That will be one of the interfaces with the Sigil a Day project for me. So that's how me personally, how I personalize the space weather. I'm like, okay, cool. Where's the moon? Just as an example, but the moon is the best. We are doing magic and she moves the most. All right. She's in Leo. That's this for me. Oh, that's not bad as a topic area. I jump it down to houses, not automatically, like moon in Taurus, moon in Cancer. There are things that immediately present themselves as, let's just say, beneficial topic areas. You can just stop there and go, yeah, moon in Taurus, eh? Done, right? Or even moon in Aries, if it's like, put the fork down and go for a run, fatty. Like there's plenty of stuff that you can do just with the sign, but it's kind of more pleasant and more personal to drop it down to house topic area, I think. So that's what I will do in moments when I'm at a loss, or even you can just run through it. If you have that idea, oh, moon is in Pisces, that's my 5th. I'm working on this book. Ooh, type it into your little document, right? The key to making sure that you're not at a loss is to record and have at least 5 or 6 ahead that you want to do. Now, would you like to be more organized and do one per decan plus a few? Do you want to break it into sun seasons? Do you want to just do Capricorn stuff in Capricorn and so on? Sure. I want too many things that fall outside of a neat 12-monthly ordering for that to work for me. I want too many Pisces things to get through Capricorn and so on. But you can. That's going to be really, really fun. That's one of the things that Sigil Magic invites you to do. All right. The imaginal is another topic area. When we did the tarot course, which is in the members area, a late lamented member asked a question which I still think about very often, because we were teaching and exploring how to use the pips only. And then we did how to use the trumps only and so on. And the question was, what happened to the Entwives? And the cards said they went into the east. That's where they are. They're not dead. They went into the east. And it's just that the male Ents have not traveled far enough yet to find them. And I think about that often. I think about, wow, what happened there? Like there's no, I don't want to say Ents don't exist. That's the wrong way of saying that. There's no way of verifying that back into reality. Whereas, will I get married next week? Yes or no tarot cards. And you don't get married. Well, it's like, well, fair enough. Something goes on because magic is an expression of the imaginal in the waking, at least when you're doing waking magic, that invites like a, what's happening there? And so sigil magic is another one of those interfaces with the imaginal. I don't think you should cast a sigil to change the course of the events at Minas Tirith. But you can use sigils to provide blessings or messages or interactions with Gandalf or the Blue Wizards. Obviously, I'm on a Tolkien kick because I'm always on a Tolkien kick. But when you start to realize that the imaginal and the spirit world are some kind of identical or interrelated, then what you can do with sigils when you quote unquote have to do 365 of them, well, I leave that to you. I leave that to you as a possibility. I'm certainly going to be doing it. I'm certainly going to be obviously doing some Middle Earth stuff and some probably Earthsea stuff. But that's because there's a Taoist thing that I've got going on the side as well. But that's a source you could do 365 days of sigils interfacing with the imaginal. And if you haven't done any of that stuff before, also tarot cards, it's really fun to do stuff like that. Like 3-card spreads, you know, we're very racist against the Celtic Cross here just in general, but little sharp 3-card spreads, little just delightful winks from the collective unconscious at us is a possibility. What else have I got on this list? Dream motifs. This is a good one. Maybe I do this one today because yesterday Sigil got me up. Funnily enough, almost like reconsidering my whole life. And if you're ever going to do it, not as extreme as that, like I'm going to become a milkman in North Tasmania or something. That's pretty good though. But oh wow, there's something just landed that is huge and important. Clearing up the fucking Venus finally left her crazy sexy dance in my first. We've got a direct station Mercury. It's not that surprising. But consequently, I had some very unusual dreams when I went back to sleep at about 3 a.m. that I would like to complete. And so there are things you can do. Now, this is a macro one, but what I would do is make it specific because you're dealing with the imaginal. So it's almost like where a dream journal hits a sigil. So pick the motifs when you woke up or when the dream stopped. Complete the dream event or sequence, completion of the dream event or sequence where I'm in the car picking up pot plants around the corner from my childhood home. Turn that into so that the medicine is released from the unconscious into the unconscious, into the conscious, something similar to that, or so that the dream medicine is absorbed into the waking. You can use a sigil to complete a process that feels like it's hanging because your alarm woke you up or similar. You can. It's another way of using sigils to interface with the imaginal is that. Phrase it however you want, but I like when I do this, it's because I'm completing a process so that the medicine is unlocked. So, because you don't want to, because this won't happen, the unconscious won't talk to you that way, but it won't be like, oh, I'll go back to sleep and pick up the dream where I was at. It's not how she works. It's not how dream logic works. But you can ask for the medicine or the message from that interrupted dream sequence to be completed in the waking or in dream or what have you. Experiment with how you want to do that, because that's another, not so much infinite source, but it's another topic area. If you're going to be doing 365 of them, interface with your dreams, interface with the imaginal, interface with time, and then interface, which I mentioned in the opening video, with beings that you would like to learn to dance with. And that's where I feel a call back to, and it's weird, I got the usual sync, working with angels and the level of the watchers is something that as we get closer to war and magic comes under further assault from friends and foe, I feel really called to the people who gave it, or the beings who gave us magic in the first place, with the lesson of moral ambiguity that came with it. So that's one of the areas I'm looking at, magically speaking anyway at the moment. And obviously I start getting syncs in the inbox and around the world to do with that as soon as that happens. But that's an example. You don't have to pick that. But that's one of the places you can look for further sigil experimentation. So it could be the saints. It could be the 72, which, by the way, we do as a calendrical walk, but you don't need to. It's just that they are expressions of specific, amongst other things, of specific moments in time. You don't need to do that. You can do however you want with the 72, any of that kind of stuff. That's just examples. You can do the you can do one sigil. This isn't quite right because there are multiple prayers to the one being. But if you look at the Orphic hymns, you could run down the list of Orphic hymns. You could, in sigil, one of the most powerful lines per hymn. You know what I mean? There's all this kind of interfacing with beings that's been on the kind of magical to-do list. That's what I'm going to give you in terms of topic areas, and I hope I hope that's enough to get through a year. I feel like it is. Cool. Cold coffee. Love it. All right. We've done topic areas. Let's move on to creation. And this is where, at the beginning of the live stream, when I sounded like Joan Rivers, I want to do a separate, and I will do a separate Sigils 101 post, because I was making notes for this video of the stuff I wanted to go through. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I can actually just point people, which I'm going to do now. Oh, we've lost the tab. I can actually just point people to this post from March 22, 2012. So she's almost a teenager. And I wrote this in London, and I wrote this in London because I couldn't do more interesting ritual magic than sigils, because we lived in a share house in West London, and this was starting to pay off. And this has been read millions of times, and this is the album, right? This is what people want me to talk about most of the time. This is Wonderwall. This is Rune Soup's Wonderwall. It's still really good. Like, I'm scrolling through it going, yeah, this is good. This is good. It's free. And so if you are beginning Sigils Reboot, Rune Soup, if you're listening to this and you, for some reason, can't find the show notes, just Google that. It auto-completes because millions of people have visited that page. And that's literally the best free introduction to the creation and activation of sigils that you could want. Obviously, there's the Sigils course, which is becoming more a repository of different things to do with sigil tech, because sigils are easy. When we did the energy healing course, and I did a series of interviews with different energy healers, I spoke like Stella Eisenstein, same thing. Biofield tuning, the same thing. It's easy. It's funny to teach something that's like, listen, it's actually kind of easy. You just have to do it, right? Sigils are like that. There's no, oh, am I getting this right? Am I getting this wrong? It's like you write out some words, you cross out some letters, you make a squiggle. So I'm going to do a separate video because I want it to be like I want to explain to people the different material and so on that I use, just so it is as idiot-proof as possible. But it's basically going to be Sigils Reboot in video form. And I will even reminisce about the article. We're not going to do that in this one because there's too much to get through and we want to do Q&A and so on. But that's it. If you've never made a sigil before, Sigils Reboot, free. Welcome to it. That's it. And stay tuned, because next week or the week after on the YouTube channel, I will actually do a full video, because the more I think about that, the more I think about I do have something to say about how this is my wonder wall. Awesome. So from a creation perspective, Sigils Reboot. And this one is still in its wrapper because I want to use this in the video. But that's art paper. This is gray art paper because I have picked two different paint colors that and Australian kids will remember these paint pens were banned at school. And if you got caught with them, they would be confiscated from you. And they were expensive when you were a kid. I mean, they're expensive now. Everything's expensive now. But it was delightful I felt like I was stealing, because my friend Michael used to, because they were so expensive, would steal them from an art supply store in Newcastle. And I would have to, I never knew he was doing it the first couple of times. Then I wised up. I would be the one who was distracting the staff while they would do it. Anyway, I was in an art supply store in Hobart getting these just before Christmas. And instead of stealing, what I was doing was filming the B-roll of me like picking up pens and the paper and so on, so that it can go in this video that I'm going to record. And it felt like I was doing the same wrong thing. It was a delightful like body memory of, oh yeah, doing the wrong thing in art supply stores. Amazing. Anyway, activation. So that's the last bit that isn't really mentioned in Sigil's Reboot is what to use. And I've been using art paper since Sigil's Reboot. So that's almost a teenager as well. Just because art paper and paint pens, but I was about to say anyone can do it, but there are, you know, you may have a disability, you may have arthritis and so on. There are obviously other ways to activate sigils if that's the case. That would be really interesting. And if that is you, join the Telegram group and talk to us about it, because I would like to see how people who don't have hands at all or movement of their hands do that process mentally. I don't know. Anyway, if there's someone out there who that satisfies, go for it. All right, so activation. We will have as a baseline, and it's in this video that I'm going to explain why. Maybe I'll make a second video about this as well for the Telegram group. Activation is another one of those areas because we're basically talking about magical ceremony that can be infinitely expanding and should be infinitely expanding. You should delight. I delight in it. I like ceremony. You should delight in magical ceremony. And when I say should, I don't want that to be prescriptive, like you're doing something wrong if you don't. That is an invitation to understand that you are supposed to be enjoying yourself, like cooking. If you're not familiar with cooking, the first thought is like, oh, I'm doing this wrong. There kind of isn't. As long as you don't poison yourself and die, you can mess stuff up. But frankly, like if you had fun messing up the casserole that turned out to be disgusting, that should still be fun. The chopping, the listening to podcasts, the putting things in, fun. Okay. And so when I say you should be enjoying yourself with ceremony, I mean it on that level. I don't mean it on the level of prescriptive. You should be enjoying yourself. It's not that. It's like giving yourself permission to play with this. Look at me already learning my play stuff for 2024. See, I can enjoy ceremony, but I can't sit there. I can sit there, but I feel guilty if I sit there and play a board game. So that's that's for me to work out. But if we're doing this daily, you can't do. So my morning ceremonial activation, particularly on client days, it's about 45 minutes. Obviously, on client days, the sequence is activate ceremony. Well, begin ceremony, activate sigil, call in the healing spirits for the first session, then the second session, and so on. So there's a couple of days a week where the sigil activation in my life fits perfectly into the full bells and smells, literally bells and incense ceremonial process each morning, because I have to do that, I get to do that multiple times a week anyway. The other days of the week, I'm kind of busy. See earlier where I reference I can't do board games without freaking out. So we do need a shorter, sharper baseline activation. And the one I've been working with is a modification, if you've done the Foundations course, of Hekar breathing. And I'll explain that in a minute. But why I like this one. So one of the things this Mercury retrograde 8 is a podcast episode with the producers of Magical Egypt, who are friends of mine, Chance and Denise. Because, oh my God, there's something about people who are filmmaking. Mercury was retrograde. This is a good example. People who work in broadcasting or filmmaking or so on are the ones that have like the worst fucking disasters with camera shit. I mean, I showed up here and my sound was off, right? Half the time before we do the shows with Austin, and he's on shows with Chris fucking every minute, everything goes wrong with his he turns full boomer. It's adorable. Everything goes wrong with his fucking camera, with his fucking microphone, and we're like, oh, that's the wrong one. We can't hear you. So we had that going on where we literally had to reshoot across several days for this Magical Egypt thing, which meant I had to give it to my editor somewhat sheepishly, like, Louis, I'm really sorry that this one is such a dumpster fire. But it is. Please edit it. And then he has a massive fire in that part of the Philippines. People across the canal from him are losing their homes. And it's more that he loses internet for a week and a half at that point. So he'd sent the video back just in time, but because it was rushed, the audio was out of sequence on it. So he's doing that now. And the point is, the new series that I'm in, which is why they're on the show, is called Heka, which is lovely, right? So I'm in Magical Egypt, which is important for me because John Anthony West is an intellectual hero of mine. And the show is Heka, which is the Egyptian, ancient Egyptian word for magic, sort of. And it is also the goddess of magic. So magic is like most things in how Egypt experienced it, is a being and a force. So and we miss that. And I've had long conversations with Matafero Lloyd at Fetu Araki about this, because people note the overlaps in god names between Maoridom and Egypt. So Ra, famously sun god, and there's been some really not good books, which is to say racist, that have tried to solve that in a way that, you know, Maoris are somehow Egyptian survivors, or the Egyptians came and taught them shit or whatever. That's not even the level where Maoridom and ancient Egypt have the most intriguing overlap. They have the most intriguing overlap in how they experienced these beings. Atua, in the case, is the term for it in Maori. We'll just say gods, but that's not right, because the Egyptians kind of, by dynastic Egypt, didn't really have gods either. They had names for forces in the universe that are alive. And so if you were experiencing love, you would say, I'm with Hathor at the moment. Or if you were angry, Set is flowing through me at the moment. That's literally how you would say, I am angry. Because you're not. You are with a force that exists in the universe, whether it's anger and hostility, whether it's love, and so on. Maoridom says the same thing with the Atua, so that you are with these beings, rather than we have that modular separateness where we're this being over here and Venus is this being over here. We don't say when we're experiencing love or desire, I am with Venus at the moment, right? And that's my preamble to why we're going to use the term Heka as activation, because as the baseline activation to begin the project. This is the one, and I'll do a separate video. It'll be pinned in the Telegram group and so on, but I'm going to talk to you about it here. Because it's quick and easy, but it's also infinitely expanding. Because if you sit with why you are using this word and what this word points to, which is, we would say, a calling up of a goddess, but it's not. It is the being with the expression of magic. If you sit with that for long enough, it's going to open very useful doors, which, when I say this isn't a course where I teach, it is, because I'm going to slip things in. I got to slip things in, hiding the kids' vegetables in their food. I'm going to slip some stuff in that if you do it for long enough, it will yield strange and wondrous results. And so the first one is that. The first one is Heka breathing. And what the other reason for using it, and this is the other rumination, this will come in the video, but it's also why I had to mention the Magical Egypt podcast that Mercury retrograde ate. Me and Chance and Venice have a really good discussion of Heka as a being and a concept, and the Egyptian etymology of it. So Ka is a spirit or light copy of yourself. Okay, so you have the Ka, you have the Ba. You remember high school. You remember the different components of the ancient Egyptian soul. So the word Heka contains the word Ka in it, Ka. And He is to make images of, or to expand infinitely. So Heka is literally the making of light images. So the expansion or replication of images of things in light. That's sigil magic. So the goddess of magic in Egypt is also a name and a force that is the replication and expansion of Ka beings. So that's the final piece of how and why what is going to be a deceptively simple process. This is sigil magic's medicine to a fucking T. This looks silly or simple or shallow until you sit with what's actually going on, and it's the biggest, deepest thing possible. So the activation, before I move further into it, you can activate however you motherfucking want. And indeed, over the course of a year, I would like you to experiment with all kinds of different activations. But we're beginning the project, and we have to begin at a baseline of like, I've never done this before. Thank you for Sigil's Reboot. Thank you for the Telegram group where I can ask and there are no such thing as basic questions, but like there are some that I just won't answer because that's not what the project is about. But other people will answer you. And the third one is, okay, cool. I've written it. How do I activate it? That's what the Hekar breathing is for you guys. So this is the baseline activation. If you're familiar with box breathing, or it's called a bunch of different stuff, square breathing, 4-count breath, that is breathing in 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, hold on empty 3, 4, right? So that's a box. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold on empty for 4. In the Foundations of Magic course, we do a version of that where you say the words Hekar instead of in 2, 3, 4, which you probably shouldn't say because it's very difficult to do on some of the two sides of that square. But what I want you to do from an activation perspective here is your baseline activation, should you wish to use it, for the beginning of the Sigils course, is in your head, instead of in 2, 3, 4, Hekar, 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 hold, Hekar, 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 out, Hekar, 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 hold and empty, Hekar, Hekar, Hekar. So you can't really, we do it on the in and the out as a box breathing, as a vocal exercise in the Foundations of Magic. You don't need to, because now that I've given you the preamble of what you're actually doing when you are vibrating internally the name of the goddess of magic, that is also the force that is magic, that is also the replication and expansion into the universe of light beings, which is what you were doing, that's all in your mind and your soul now. And so if you just breathe in 3 Hekar, out, or 2, just whatever your breath capacity is, however you want to say it, do that 4 times. Why not? 4 times 4. Do it however many times you want. Do it until the sigil is activated, until it feels to be the case. That one you can do on the bus. That one you can do on the plane. You can do on a train. You can do, I'm running out of boat. Don't do while driving, but you can do it in a car, unless it's a self-driving car, and your sigil should be to get me out of this death trap. That was the other piece of why I'm doing it. That's the other piece of sharing this, because it's an invitation to think deeply about where such a shallow process comes from. The big thing that I think the Rune Soup has offered, particularly at a membership level, is to plug back in allegedly contemporary and sometimes even frivolous exercises. Not all of them, some of them are frivolous. Fidget spinners have no place in magic, right? But when you think about what sigil magic is, and you'll get a taste of this in the classic Sigil's Reboot article, explain in detail how it is fundamentally different from the cave paintings in Lascaux. You can't, because it's not. And so I wanted a activation exercise to begin the process. I mean, it is January 2nd, so it has begun for some people. Some people started on the solstice, etc., etc. Do you? All wonderful. But I want you to think about what you were doing when you make sigils. And I want you to have at least an initial activation exercise that is deeper than it may seem. So those are the things that I offer at the outset of this project. And what are we now on? 1 minute, 1 hour exactly, give or take. If you are listening to the audio version of this, thank you for listening. And I'm happy to say, as I'm sure you can hear, my voice improved over the course of the live stream. But if you're after the Q&A, which if you're keen to join us on the Sigil a Day project, you should. That's only on the video version. So come and join us on YouTube for that. And for those of you who are on YouTube right now, I'm going to drink some cold coffee and we'll jump into the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, this does not have to be just about Sigil a Day. This is what we do with the live streams. Ask whatever you want. Let's have a chat. Oh yeah, the Roswell crash. It is good, isn't it? The classic pieces. So it's funny you mentioned that. Because I'm going to do a video version of, like last year before, I did a recollection of the classic post series from peak blog days for Rune Soup, right? Apocalypse Pharmaca, all of that stuff. Arcanology, especially. And that was really cool. And people will say, like, oh, you should write these again. No, I shouldn't. No one reads shit. People say, I wish you blog more. Pay me. Like, I have, there's a light right there that I need to keep on. But the idea of doing a Sigils 101, like doing almost like a video version of Sigils 101, I'm like, maybe I keep that process going. Maybe it's just me talking about like articles. I don't know. I'd love to have the time for it. But honestly, one of my goals for 2024, which isn't on this list because it's not really a topic area as much as it is just a to-do list, is I want to do more video stuff anyway. So funny you mentioned that. Creating one sigil a day and activating a shoal. So I'm going to, there's a good point, Ren. The platonic ideal of Sigil a Day 2024 is to create and activate one sigil a day. That's plainly not going to happen. We're going to skip days and so on so that you can, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. If you miss a few days, just do 3 or 4. Now, one of the things we're already talking about in the Telegram group, and this is in the Sigils reboot and in the Sigils course, the best way I have found to do sigils so that they work most efficaciously is if you have actually forgotten what they're about. So you can sequence them. So you might write January 5th sigil today and turn it into a sigil. And then you might write January 6th tomorrow, January 6th. Anyway, and so on, so that when it comes to activation, you are 3 or 4 sigils ahead and you've low-key forgotten what they're about. That's completely fine too. I'm sure that will end up happening one way or the other. But the platonic ideal of the project is that you create and activate one a day, because the thing that I'm keen to, I guess, exercise from a muscle perspective is that process. I already do the bunching, sequencing. I don't remember what this one is, and it works. But I want to strengthen the circuit between, oh, I want this, I will go after it on a daily basis. That's a thing that I'm looking to get out of it. For you, it can be different. Cool. Same question I have. Very excited for the prayer course. Yeah, me too. Do you always destroy your physical sigils? See, this is one of those, like, I answered this 100 times in all the places that I answer these things. There's a whole section on it in the members course. No. All right. But there's no right or wrong thing to do with that. What will happen to debt during the future apocalypse? Well, the future apocalypse is the cancellation of government debt. So that's 2025, the first 2 quarters of next year. Yeah, no, it's 2024 is when we start to get sovereign debt defaults, which the war will be used as the air cover for, and it's not good. Because they're replacing it with the digital currency that is programmable so that they can get rid of their pension obligations and also build a digital prison around you at the same time, which is what I've been saying since 2020, 2019, actually, even before the, but now we're in the pointy end of that. Could one also draw when in a meditative state without using letters to make it? Yeah, go for it. So if you're just, hang on a sec. All right, I just got to close down that. Brilliant. Yes, you absolutely can do spontaneous sigils. Let me re-embiggen myself. Stop screen. You absolutely can do spontaneous sigils where you're just drawing and creating. That's a really good example of, like, what do you think the first act of magic ever was? Because the spirit once showed me it was a woman standing on a plane watching a tree move in the wind, and then she moved her body to match the branches moving in the wind. And I had a spirit show me that in a glass once, and I'm like, you know what? You're probably right. So in terms of intuitively creating in response to something, fucking go for it. Yeah. Would there be any value in scripting a dream diary ahead of sleeping to activate lucid dreams? So yeah, go for it. This is already a lot of work. So one of the things when people get excited about magic, and this happened with when we started intention groups amongst the members and so on, is there's all this cool shit. It's like, I want to put Cyprian in and I want to do this and I want to do that. It's like, cool, cool, cool. This is already a lot of work. Take it out. Let's come in at the bare minimum. You are committing to doing a whole like a sigil a day for a whole fucking year. By the time it gets to May, you'll be like, fuck you, Gordon, fuck you. So just be careful. What you can do if you're already doing some kind of dream recording is find out where that interfaces with the project. But there's no reason not to include lucid dream activation and so on. What is a robofish? You'll find that in the article. What about personal debt? So personal debt will go away. The you will own nothing and be happy is them saying, oh, we'll get rid of all your personal debt, but actually we're just going to get rid of all debt. So it'll go, but it's just another way into the trap, right? So that's what will happen. You will, if you have a mortgage, so one of the plans, this was the thing that was in Canada, that came out as Plan A during 2020, was for people who have a mortgage, the government will pay their mortgage, but then you are beholden to the government, right? So it's like you get to live in that house, but you can only use this money, and then the next thing is going to be you need these injections and so on and so on. So it's, don't look at the pieces. Look at this is why it's going to happen, because people can only see the pieces. They can't see the total trap, and it will spring around us. We won't work it out until it's too late, but the trap doesn't hold us for long. Put it that way. All right. Is a sigil something you know you're going to do? Classic example. Yeah, cool. We were talking about the robofish. Excellent. It's in Chaos Protocols. It's also in Sigil's Reboot. Do I like the work of Carlos Castaneda? Yes. I like lots of things. I say that. Yes. He ended up a weird cultist by the end. And the story is a half-truth, is the right way of saying it, rather than it made up, because he actually did know Mexican curandero. It's just that it didn't happen in field work. It was like on the outskirts of LA. So do I like the work of Carlos Castaneda? Sure. I like lots of stuff. I especially like Central American and Mexican stuff. Yes, I like lots of stuff, even if it has parts of it that are problematic. I mean, I like the Necronomicon, right? So that's Lovecraft, and he was awful. So yes. It means that people can't actually leave a house to next of kin at that point. Yeah. They're trying to get rid of that here now anyway. So the idea has been trial ballooned in Australia that once you die, the house goes to the state because you shouldn't get to keep it. The West is ending by coming for all this shit to keep itself alive, governments, and that's why they collapse, because they will reach too far. They've already said they want you to kill your pets. I don't know what people aren't seeing here. They will keep going. This is how bullies work. They will keep going until you turn around and say no more. But we haven't said that yet, and we won't until the trap is set, and then the whole thing comes down. I really hope we do a Necronomicon someday. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I don't know how. It was not by much, but it was literally the least popular voted of the options for the Q1 course. Prayer is the right call. No, I'm putting the course together now. I'm doing some of the early videos for it, and it's going to be so fucking good. Like, it's almost as big as the foundations, if not bigger already, which I think I'll be able to pull off because I have an editor now, which I didn't have during the foundations. But it's so good. I'm so excited for it. But I also want to do a Necronomicon course one day, after the war, perhaps. Yeah. Oh, happy. Yeah. Well, there you go. So you'll be able to say that every birthday. That's cute. Sigil's Reboot came out on your birthday. What is that card in your cap? It's not a card. I got this in Paraguay. It's let me just lean forward. It's a lemur and it says wired. Yeah. Do you work with servitors that you create for sigils? Not often. I like real spirits. I've done servitor stuff. I did a lot of it in London. It's not for me. Yeah. teaching material out of UC Berkeley in the 90s was pushing Malthus. That's California. That goes without saying. I was thinking of doing activations on Thursday and Sunday, Jupiter and Sundays. That's cool. All right. I like that. Let me know how it goes. I have done, one of the things that I have done with sigil work before is work out what day it is. Like, oh, it's a Mars day, and then find like a martial goal, which is another way of doing it. But yes, if you're going to bundle them up and do them on days that are more beneficial for the sort of activation, that's a good idea. All right, but if you start and do once a week, like, it's still better because you will do 52 activations rather than 365, which I guarantee is more than you've ever done before. But something is gained and something is lost every time you depart from the daily formula, right? For me, I want it to be daily because I think the long-term effects on me are going to be, this is my guess, I might be wrong. The long-term effects are more beneficial. It's kind of like exercise in theory, more of it more regularly. At least that's one of my priorities for doing it, is to actually do practical enchantment as close to every day as possible. Any plans on releasing Fortune's Fools as a standalone or ebook? No, you can sign up to see, I made this joke with Austin, like when something goes out of print, I'm just going to leave it a few years and make people scream with murderous rage when's 36 Faces coming out. So Fortune's Fools will have some kind of second iteration at some stage, but yeah. Oh, your tree just blinked. Did it? Or is that my camera? It might be because I keep moving my head. Are sigils well suited to inner targets? I will release X past experience. They are, to be honest. But see, I would do fire ceremonies for releasing trauma. So they are, but I think fire ceremonies are better. It doesn't mean inner targets. I actually think they're better for growing self-love rather than releasing trauma. I think it's a growing medium rather than an expelling medium. So I would do, and I do, fire ceremonies to release trapped energy associated with trauma, either for myself or with clients. And the inner work that I prefer for sigils is a growth one. So lifting something up rather than removing, but you absolutely can. What I would do in that case then is generate it, and as if you were doing a fire ceremony, pick the sigil up and breathe out that trauma onto it, and then very definitely burn it. So split the difference and fire ceremony a sigil. Novel ways to charge and launch sigils. I am sure you will find them over the course of a year. Advice to keep intentions pure when at the what the fuck was I thinking phase. I have none. You just have to learn. You just have to learn. I should not have asked for that. Yeah, that's between you and your psyche. The fact that I had established exercise habits before makes it easy to regain them, and also to one-off here and there when I'm really slacking. Cool. I feel like that's the right mentality to head into it with, right? What are the dangers of sigils? Do they feed on something to be activated? They don't feed on anything to be activated. Think about, it's one of the reasons we are operating under the tutelage of the force that is Heka, its proliferation throughout the universe. In the same way, because this is how I think the universe works, in the same way a hologram doesn't feed off anything, right? Reflections don't feed off anything through a prismatic crystal. They expand. That's just what it is. Well, they reflect and refract. So no, there are plenty of dangers because it's magic. You can ask for the wrong thing, you know. And when I say wrong thing, it's like you should probably not sigil for Satan to invade your house and assault you in the middle of the night. Like, you can, I wouldn't. So, but not in the sense of it's not a computer game and it doesn't feed off energy in that way. It's the opposite, particularly, and it's why the Heka thing, as I said, deceptively simple, but isn't. You have infinite energy available to you because it's an expansion out into the cosmos. What to do when a sigil manifests? Do you take them down, dispose of them? So I think I'm going to dispose of more of them this time around. A couple of reasons for that. I'm in a life that has more access to fire, right? So we have a fire going because it's cold in southern Tasmania for 8.5 months of the year. Obviously not at the moment, thank God. Although I'll be honest, some of the nights it's been touch and go. But I also do firework. Like there's my ceremonial fire pit just out that window. I have this place is filled with candles and so on. So I think I'm going to do a lot of burning. I also, and part of this is I need to work out. These are paint pens. I've previously used more biodegradable stuff when I'm throwing them out, which is something. It's a longer story. A core part of my practice down here in the valley is custodial. And so if I am throwing out paper that is made with toxins into an area that I'm some kind of, not like native custodian, but I'm in a custodial relationship with, I'm generating cross currents. So I'm going to burn them more than I'm going to throw them out, because throwing them out requires different use of material, which of course brings up, can you use leaves? Yes, and so on, right? But there's that. So historically down here, because we're by the water as well, throwing them into the ocean and so on. But I wouldn't use, actually this paper is probably all right. I'll have a look. But I probably wouldn't. Is this going to, in the grand scheme of things, this is what working at the field is like. Does the biosphere collapse into an apocalyptic wasteland because a piece of paper with a paint pen on it is thrown into the ocean in southern Tasmania? Probably not, but I did say I wouldn't do stuff like that to these beings, and so I can't turn around and do them. But good point, actually. That hasn't come up. Somebody remind me, maybe I will do a, I guess, animist disposal of sigils video for the Telegram group. Let's say I launch a sigil for a target I later realize I didn't want. Do you think it will not manifest, or might I try to resigil for a correction? So I would suggest from Sigils Reboot, you go exploring through the free articles, the dozens of articles about sigil magic and so on that's in there. Because one of the things that's so good about sigil campaigns is you move in the approximate direction of what you are after and continue to refine. But what your question tells me is that a bigger thing that you want to look at is your desire work, which is all in the members area. Like magic is basically getting out of the way of the cosmic desire that seeks to express through you. So very rarely, if you get that right, are you going to be, oh, I don't want that anymore. I wanted the green car, not the blue car. So the question is not the question. But to answer your question, look at that 2012 time depth. Just click on the sigils tag or topic area, and there's all kinds of stuff about that. I had a bunch about improving in Tahoe. By the time I found them, the Tahoe was gone, but there were other sigils in the pack, so I set them off. Oh, cute. In a shoal, when do you dispose of the robofish? So they just activate and then they're dead, because like I eat spaghetti tonight, and then you eat spaghetti, which by the way I am having tonight. No, I already have something for my sigil goal for today. Otherwise I would. Then you can throw them out or bin them whenever, but they're also inactivated at that point because they've done the thing they need to do. Thoughts on moon void of course times. See, I don't. It's a good question, but it's complicated because it's like, that's not why your sigil won't work. Okay, so I feel really, I'm still very chaos magic when it comes to magical elections. The best time to do magic is when you need the magic. And if it's not urgent, the best thing to do is find the best possible space weather to do it. But if you have an urgent situation and the moon's void, of course, fucking do it. Like, you know, I wouldn't avoid, like, I'm not going to look at the days in 2024 where the moon's void, of course, and avoid them. You certainly can. For me, it's not, particularly with this kind of magic, it's not that, the uplift in doing so is not worth the time for me, but go for it. You mentioned that I wanted to work on dental health. That has gone great. Thank you very much. I'm not going to show you my teeth because I'm drinking black coffee, but I knew that mouthwash was a scam, and it is a scam. Like, mouthwash is associated with cardiovascular disease and all kinds of stuff because you're destroying the microbiome for no reason. You can wash your mouth with certain things, but I mean, this is the baseline of like fluoride and whatever. We know that you shouldn't be using neurotoxins. But everything so I did all of that. My teeth started to improve. Xylitol, I would use a hydrogen peroxide wash, not every day, obviously, but if you're at a point where it's like, oh, I need to correct the bacterial assembly, hydrogen peroxide, my Trump wash will knock a whole bunch of bugs out. And xylitol beneficially feeds the beneficial bacteria more than the non-beneficial. So it's quite a good combination to restore the bacterial assembly. But flossing is a scam. You're basically just damaging already damaged gum tissue. So there's a whole world of natural dentistry that's out there, because it's the same as anything else. It's the same as shampoo. It's like, well, what did we do for 2 million years before in the 19th century? We had a bunch of white men in waistcoats strapping metal to our teeth because we started eating the wrong diet and they started growing wrong. Like, fuck, you know. So I'm through all kinds of looking glasses at the moment, and it's absolutely borne fruit. One of the things I kind of want to do, although I can't handle, I'm going to spend several weeks looking like Renfield if I do it. I want to move in the no shampoo direction. We're already in like a natural soap area, but like the last piece of that is the no shampoo. Now, I've actually gone several weeks with that shampoo before because that's what happens when you're on the dieta in the Amazon. And everyone says, by 2 weeks, your hair is blah, blah, blah. Not mine. Mine is still like, you have escaped from prison, like mental hospital prison. So I need like a month where no one will look at me, which is somewhat difficult with this job, not just because of the live streams and so on, but, you know, client facing work and what have you. I need a month where I can move shamelessly from shampoo to no shampoo. And that's really the final piece of the transformation away from the idiotic, carcinogenic, endocrine disrupting chemicals that Palmolive and other big companies tell you are essential to being a human, which are just not true. Anyway, can I buy a year of RSPM? No. All right, Corbin, maybe make a note of, oh yeah, doing that. Shampoo is a scam. Most toothpaste is a scam. Make your own deodorant. We already make our own deodorant. That absolutely. That's completely, it's completely true. It's all, you don't actually need any of that stuff. And your life is better for it because it's, a bunch of this stuff is literally associated with, and so it's funny, when it's associated with things like heart disease, it's not because it causes it, it's because it's interrupting the natural functioning of the human, which outputs as things like heart disease, right? So if you're fucking with your bacterial assembly, that's what it is. Baking water and see, this is the thing, Hendrik. The true no shampoo world is not, because we already have like a natural shampoo that we make. The true no shampoo world is not moving from Palmolive, which we abandoned that kind of garbage years ago, to a natural one. That's where we are. The boss move is like, I don't even need that. I mean, you do if like, because we live on a farm and we do farm stuff. If your hair gets dirt in it because you're out doing farming, then yes, you need something to remove the dirt from the hair. But like true no shampoo is just water. And I almost wanted to put that on my goals for 2024, but I am too scared, right? I'm too scared because then I'll have to do it. And I don't want to spend a month looking like Renfield. Can you give some insight on using your astrological birth chart for sigil timing, a la the fruit machine? So we've tried a bunch of experiments over the years amongst the membership on making the assumption that some people, because of a particular planet might be stronger in their chart or versus others, might be better at enchantments that are in that area. And we could not find any evidence that was the case. So I wouldn't use my birth chart to time sigil magic. I would use it to derive insight as to areas, this is the transits thing, the areas that I can target. But I wouldn't use my chart specifically to time things, unless you want, like, there's obvious stuff like, oh, it's, you know, something easy, like, oh, it's a Mercury miss, so it's another moon miss, right? Like, you could do that if you wanted, but otherwise, there's no noticeable difference in people who have a really strong Mars versus who have a really weak Mars in martial goals when it comes to magic, because we literally investigated that with the Lunar Mansions project. So I wouldn't overcomplicate it. Let your birth chart be a source of targets rather than timing. Go full drag and rock the wigs. Yeah, but like, it's hot down here, and I feel like if you're using wigs to hide your gross hair, then your head is getting wet anyway. If you can hear beeping, we're dehydrating mint to go with the Teleré. And the wizard hut it stinks because I've got the Brussels sprouts, the broccoli sprouting on the bench, and that reeks because it's releasing the sulforaphane into the air. This is where I do my juicing, and we're like dehydrating mint. It's just living the millennial whole food plant-based vittle dream up here. But anyway. Consequently, things will just like randomly beep. It's like, what the hell is that? Oh yeah, the mint, we're dehydrating. So yeah, wigs are the answer, but they make your scalp dirty and then you have to wash your hair. I've gone all the way through that. Also, can't afford wigs. Holy shit. I have some drag friends. They're like, how, this is why you're poor. You're like, the wig industrial complex has got you trapped. Shampoo less and less, baking soda will get the oils out on a bad day. See, I thought the oils are the bit you're supposed to keep. Rinse mouth with coconut oil. Oil pulling, I'm a fan of. 100%. Just go for the shaved look and don't worry about see, I don't want to tempt fate with that. Yeah. Also moved over to natural soap as well for different reasons and realized, oh, now I'm not slathering myself with strange endocrine disrupting chemicals. Not just strange. It's like when you look on the back of the, and it's a bit annoying. This life feels so natural down here. We have our own wood. We have our own rainwater. Not at the moment. I think we've got like 3 tomatoes today. Like, we grow some of our food. I'm not eating eggs at the moment. Please come and get some eggs. It's very easy. And we don't have Uber Eats because it doesn't exist down here. So if we don't cook it, we don't eat it. And we're bathing in the cleanest water on earth, all the rest of it. It's very easy to be like, this is so good. Everyone can do this. And then you go somewhere for a night. So James and I have a Greek Christmas tradition. And I don't mean Orthodox Christmas coming up. I mean, literally, we go out one night in Hobart to this Greek restaurant, this hectic family-run Greek restaurant. It's not even the best Greek restaurant in Hobart, but it's fun because, like, the waiters argue about who told who that they were out of octopus. It's fantastic. But we stay in a hotel up there because, drink driving. And if you don't remember to bring all the natural things that you're used to, you go into, it's a nice hotel we were staying at, the bathroom, and you look at the cleaning products that are on display. And even though they say, natural ingredients, like they've got native Australian oils in there and whatever, it's like, no, this is still garbage. So this life is very easy to live down here. But as soon as you step back into normal reality in any way, it's like, oh, come on now. I've been no shampoo for 5 years, and I have a lot of people who think I dye my gray, but I don't. Nearly 60 years old, and see, Andrea, this is the dream. This is the dream that is ahead of me. Yeah. So the other option is just the clients. I don't want to look like I've escaped from a mental hospital on client sessions. I think I could probably do a video a day, just like documenting my descent into hideousness so that I can emerge beaming out the other side. But I don't know. Like, I can't take a month off clients just because I'm not washing my hair. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's good. There's already evidence of my paint pen on my floor, my fingers, and probably my clothing. That's magic. I treat my bipolar with a true strict ketogenic diet, Dr. Chris Palmer. See, that's, I think, one of the, because I'm going to do, because I was on, obviously did keto for years, and it worked until it didn't. And it's a different, like, it actually upregulates the sympathetic system, which is why it didn't achieve the, like, the final third of the health and weight loss goals that I wanted for years. But I'll never be anti-keto because it's a, it is a powerful medical intervention for things. My first thought is things like bipolar, like 100%. So when I do my video on like the move to whole food plant-based, it's not going to be a clickbaity one like 10-year vegan goes carnivore or carnivore goes blah, blah, blah. I guess when I was animal-based, like, this is magic. Half my fucking friends are vegan, right? And I mean proper vegan, not bullshit modern vegan eating, which real vegans don't. Like, this is why the companies are in such trouble. Like the Bill Gates monster fucking impossible garbage. The people who've been vegan for like 25 years are like, I don't eat that. I eat plants. I don't eat fucking, modified pea protein mixed with saturated fat made by Bill Gates. Like, what the fuck? That's, anyway. So I was never tribal about eating plants because people are on different health journeys. Like, I'm on a different health journey, right? But there's some stuff I have learned over the course of that I would like to share. But you're a very good example of where keto remains a like a powerful intervention. Bandana durag, yeah, but I'm white. I'm quite. It's my last name. Can't do it. It's so worth doing. The first month can look a bit. Yeah, see, I need to go and hide somewhere. And that's the trouble. Everywhere I think of hiding is gross, like, but beautiful gross. It's like I could go back to Vanuatu for a month, or I could go back to Paraguay for a month, where it's boiling hot and I will sweat like a nun watching porn, which means I'll need to wash my hair. I can't. Yeah, your hat covers your hair though. It does because I didn't shower this morning because I was up till 3 because of my first fucking sigil. So I got up at 6. I just naturally woke up at 7, and I'm like, is the live stream today? No. And then it gets to about 7:45, which is when it starts. I'm like, oh, it is 2. I better just put a hat on and turn the camera on. Yeah. Oh, cycling-induced diabetes. It's interesting. Interesting places you're going to visit this year. Ask me next week. I'm waiting for a couple of turning points to hit before I make plans. Yeah. So there will be more about prayer and sigils as the prayer course rolls in, because I'm going to be doing some free content around prayer as well. But yes, there will be more about that. You don't need it for now, though. You can do Hekar or whatever you want. Hip Hop Gordon exists in an alternate universe. Yeah. Not one I'd like to visit. All right. Yes, the food in the mental health world is like the bottom end of the rung for hospitals in general. When I was hospitalized in Paraguay, the food was delicious. And I was in hospital, I guess, a year and a half before that in Hobart, and it was nightmarish. It was nightmarishly bad. And nutrition is the single, that and body movement, those are the 2 interventions. You get them right, and 80% of what we consider chronic clears up. And yeah, not for the first time, I'm reminded about how Ursula Le Guin is like a prophet of a better future. And in the Ecumen books, there are planets in the Ecumen where hospitals are how we would treat 5-star resorts. So they're out of town and they're in natural settings, and the best possible food is available. And if you're unwell, you go through, obviously they're free because she's an anarchist, was. And I just think that is actually cheaper by, I would say, a factor of 5 in the case of the United States than how we do disease care now. If we actually had 5-star healing facilities where you could go for whatever, obviously for car accidents, you need a triage in town. But if you look at, you get, when I say there's no such thing as a chronic illness, you know what I mean by that? Like 80% of the symptoms associated with that diagnosis, which is a curse, clear up when the nutritional, body movement, sunlight, water interventions are made. It doesn't matter what it is, it just is. That's what it is. And instead, we pay thousands of dollars per person per month for metals that we put in our body that have side effects and make everyone worse. It's like, you think, oh, it's unaffordable to have 5-star resort hotels in natural settings at the edges of towns and cities. No, it's cheaper. We will have more money for municipal projects if we did that. This is a hellish timeline, but we have to be the thing that moves it into a better one. Would you ever consider offering PayPal? No. Everyone says that, but like, I don't trust it as a platform. I don't really trust Stripe, but I definitely don't trust PayPal. And whilst it's convenient for you, I can charge you $49 a month because I have to have additional accounting processes to go with it. Believe me, it's optimized. Like, this isn't, we don't have any off menu items. It is the, by a factor of 10, and it's the best, but like by a factor of 10, the cheapest and most convenient way I can manage to get these things to work. It's just what it is. We live in a dark timeline, and I am actually planning for how something like the Rune Soup premium membership survives when we have digital IDs to access the internet, not what's not a payment processor preference. Yeah. So would I ever consider offering implies that I've never considered it. Trust and believe. Like, I've built a second fucking foundation. Like I'm heading in the opposite direction because I have to, because I know it's coming. Yeah. One of my altars is from a hospital planet. Oh, that's cool. The goddess is there is war and healing, always right, but it's beautiful, always purple, everything's outdoors, no buildings. See, it's doable. There are dimensions where it happens, right? Yeah. I would say, so when I talk about the food, one of the things that Latin America, I mean, Cubans get credit for it, but Latin America doesn't get credit for is the quality of its sandwiches, probably because Americans own sandwich discourse, and this is one of those classic bigger is better situations where it's like, these aren't sandwiches as big as my head that will cause a heart attack. Like, but Latin American sandwiches are pretty fucking good. So there's the food that I was eating in the Paraguayan hospital was stuff that I wouldn't necessarily eat, but was of quality, sufficient quality. Like the sandwiches that I had in the hospital were better than most of the sandwiches I had out of the hospital in Asuncion. But I can't believe I'm saying this, but it was made with love. Like, the slop you get in a modern Western hospital is like prison food. It's like canteen tray slop. And I was being delivered, like, and it's Latin America, so they do lots of juices and so on. So freshly made juice and this kind of toasted sandwich thing. I'm like, this is actually really nice. The love component, I think, is a nutritional uplift that isn't there. I have never met anyone I know people who work in hospitals, obviously, I'm from a medical family, but I've never met anyone who's worked in hospital catering. And I wonder, are there people who love food who go into hospital catering who despair of the hospital catering industrial complex squishing out their dreams? Or is it more like, and this is what I think it is, it's like private prison guards. It's like, I needed the job. What do you want? Which is fair, by the way, but that it structurally has no capacity to have love or dynamism enter it. Because once every 18 months, you'll get an article in mainstream media about this hospital tried making food that didn't make people want to kill themselves. And you think, well, why don't we just always do that? Why don't we just always do that? It's not that, and when I say it's not that difficult, I'm sure the hospital food contracts, like American school food contracts, it's $100 per child and they deliver $3 worth of food. I'm sure it's the same with hospital food. And you think this fucking Elon, get in there with like an Uber where you're actually just bringing healthy food from nearby restaurants that can come in. You know what I mean? Like there are ways of getting that money into independent businesses, poke bowl businesses, salad businesses, whatever. There are ways of getting it in. Listen, utopia is not that far off. We just don't get to it. Yeah. Any reading book recommendations for January? I'm reading stuff that's all prayer related. No, not yet. I have film recommendations. That best I can do is film recommendations. Meme. Yeah. All right. But love absolutely counts. We make everything with at least a night equality, but we love to do it when we talk about love is important. Cool. Are sigils suited to influencing specific people without personal concerns used in folk magic? I think you'll need to explain that a little bit more, what you mean by that. All right. Oh, that's good. So there are people somewhere in the hospital catering world that do it with love. That's good. Yeah. So the hospital cafeteria food, I'm using Royal Hobart as an example, is fine. But the food that they were serving me was shit. So it hasn't taken place because it hasn't. Yeah. Planning to do the Nomad thing in style, America this year, starting with a month in Peru in ceremony. Any suggestions on places to visit after that? Wait. Do you mean just in Peru or do you mean in South America? Because I have many recommendations and then I will explode with jealousy. Yeah. Will writing be a thing in the future? I would even think a professor of Shakespeare would be challenged to be apt enough for 200 characters. In South America. Yeah, I'll come back to it. Yeah, I think, look, do you one better. It's 100% likely that we lose parts of the internet between now and let's say 2028, but more like 2030. We don't get through Uranus and Gemini without all of that being disrupted through war and solar sunspots and what have you. So not only will writing be a thing again, it might be like cigarette typewriter writing for a while. But if you mean, we're just at a point, the West is at a point of human civilization where it's I think about this, this is almost sigils related, right? So is a video a form of writing? Because I'm not there. Like I'm not in your room or on your phone or whoever you're watching this. So when we wrote, it was to transport ourselves to say a thing or to perform a thing in front of you. Like this is so stoned. Is video a form of writing? And that's to answer like, will writing ever be a thing again? We're expressing more. I think when writing does become a thing again, it will be revalued as its own specific kind of thing. And I go even further than that from a magic perspective, because from an animist angle, I was going to say perspective again, writing is dangerous. So when we think about the gods that give us magic and the gods that give us writing is the same thing. Thoth, obviously, but let's go Hermes, Mercury, same kind of being. For the last 250 years, we've considered that a universal good because we've had a 19th century industrial process telling us that universal literacy is a universal good. But literacy, in the sense of remembering the letters of the English alphabet assembled into words that you can read in a factory, is a good, but it comes at a cost. We know that now. We know that the non-literate rather than illiterate modes of thinking and learning and singing and understanding are massively destroyed. And it's a huge part of the colonial project is that destruction of the non-literate expressive lifeways. And I know that the people who would tell the stories of the delivery of writing, like Hermes is ambiguous. Like, here, have this. Like, this is good and bad. This is not, oh gee, thanks. This is not eating broccoli, right? This is tricksy. And it shapes reality in very dangerous ways. And it comes at a cost. And I think when we get back to writing, at least in magic, I would like that awareness. And so that's post-internet, post-collapse of internet, writing for necessity, coming back to finishing off the Pluto and Aquarius era next decade. I think writing, I would like to see writing have its position corrected. Does that make sense? Am I growing anything special in the garden? No. To assist in your plant-based journey? No, not at the moment, because the the greenhouses are overgrown with a mess. But what I will be doing is season extending various herbs in them. So, because it's high summer here, so, and we missed it because I was in Paraguay for the spring. So we're not really growing anything really to speak of. We've half-heartedly put in some cucumbers and tomatoes. But that's cool. It's like in this week and next week, we will be removing all the weeds and doing all that kind of work and getting the greenhouses back into action, because we still have about 6 weeks of warmth to grow some seedlings to season extend in the other direction, particularly herbs and so on. I'm going to be putting in kale, quite a few rows of kale. So for the winter, yes, but nothing like because I like kale, like I always have, but nothing like special from a whole foods plant-based perspective. It's just one of those hilarious things that I go in this direction from a health perspective, having grown a bunch of stuff for the last few years. And the year that I move in a whole food plant-based direction, we grow nothing over the summer. Yay me, well timed, as per usual. I think I mean using sigils to target a person like my boss agrees to give me a pay rise. So what you would do there is turn yourself into the target. I get a pay rise. So to answer your question, yeah, sure, you can kind of insigil at someone, but all magic works better from a personal transformation perspective, because the goal, as far as I can tell, is to become the person that the results happen to. I think that's how most of that manifestation stuff works. So rather than my boss gives me a pay rise, I get paid more at work. And you can be specific about the amounts, but you're still hitting the target in a way that's self-transformational. Because what if you don't deserve, I don't know you, Thomas, what if you don't deserve it? I have to become the person that deserves it. So yes, you can point at other people with sigils. You can point at other people with other kinds of magic. But when you go to do that, ask yourself, well, what's the inner transformation? What's the inner unlock that will yield those results? Obviously, the classic and obvious example, which I know none of you will do, is love magic, make her love me. Well, that's setting off some like self-development klaxons, isn't it? Like, make her love me. What do I mean by make? What do I mean by love? How am I experiencing this absence? Why am I experiencing this absence? There's 4 things to begin the process of transformation on that may actually result in a person you were previously dating coming back into your life. But it's more like, okay, whenever we look at something outward, and it doesn't mean don't do this, protection magic's a good one, but it is always an invitation to look internally of like, oh, hang on, well, what's the inner unlock? What's the inner gap here? But and it'll work better once you find it. So my boss agrees to give me a pay rise. That's a question. That's a statement. I am paid X amount at work, or I receive this much, or a pay rise, or so on. Yeah. Hang on to your antique printing press, Gutenberg all over again. Kind of. They aren't even teaching cursive anymore in schools. Yes, we'll be coming off a low, put it that way. A book to improve your handwriting. See, all right, this isn't for me. I've got enough kind of macro goals, but there's something about penmanship and calligraphy and sigil making that invites itself to be like a 2024 goal. So if you're looking at improving your penmanship, can you make that a sigil category, which might include taking a couple of online calligraphy courses, or, you know, like, there's something in that. It's not for me for this year, but if you've been thinking about it, that's kind of cool. Modern Western allopathic medical system does not appear to be sustainable, but I haven't seen it mentioned in anyone's timeline of collapse. Well, it's because like everything's going to collapse, right? Have you any comments on the medical system's future? There is no medical system. There is an allopathic excuse for control. So when we look at what they're planning to do to bring in that world government, it is going to be which it was several years ago, a biomedical cover story. This is what the WHO Treaty and all the rest of it is. So it collapses, and I will fucking Return of the Jedi final moments celebrate when it does come down. But the allopathic system is being used as the cover story to roll in a global control system. So that's what happens to it. In the PGM, there are a few spells you say to a rock and place the rock elsewhere for the rock to cast a spell. Cute. That kind of, yeah. One of the things that I will do a small video on, probably not with the paint pens, but it's in that same world about sigils in physical targets. Enchant for the end, so the field has much more ways to reach that specific end. Yeah, it's a good example. Working on an article for a recovery journal on prayer for atheists. Any reading suggestions? The parapsychologists, so Elizabeth Togg, even Real Magic, Dean Radin, and Lynn McTaggart, because, as I've said before, it's the same thing. You should be able to convince Richard Dawkins to go to church, because the health outcomes are so starkly different between people who go to church versus those who don't in aggregate, like on average, because the level of community, particularly with things like the singing, you're increasing vagal tone. There's a whole bunch of materialist reasons as to why someone who doesn't believe in God should actually go to church or be in some sort of religious or spiritual community. Similarly with prayer, like whether it bends God's ear or not, it has demonstrable uplift for the people who receive it and the people who project it. So yes, that's what I would do. Yeah. So, I have some teenage love magic gone awry stories. That is for sure. How about bearing citrus in soil that you plant your plants or herbs or seeds? So this comes back to a materia situation. I would need to find much healthier biodegradable stuff, but yes, for sure. When at As Above in Portland, I saw some of the sigils Kelsey made and wanted my sigils to have that kind of artistry. Yeah, that'll be 2024 goal. Yeah, they do good sigils. Dr. Sledge at Esoterica uses calligraphy as a meditation practice. Fair enough. Also doesn't think magic is real. Prayer for Atheists. I like Dr. Moody's work on near-death experiences. Yeah, that might be something. When you're at a dead end financially because the skills you learned are very difficult to monetize, get clients, where to start? Learn a better skill, just more money. It's going to be you specific, but the first thing is to tell that story differently, for sure. So if you want a mid-six-figure income and you train to be a blacksmith, I wouldn't tell the story. You're not at a dead end. And the skills then aren't so much difficult to monetize as what wants to come through you into the world escapes money's celebration. So on a macro level, there's a different story that you need to tell there to release the bonds of desire and wealth and scarcity thinking from what needs to be expressed and what is yours to do. There's a big part of like the desire work in foundations, but also on a client by client basis, is looking at where those scarcity stories come from and how we tell stories about where our value is and what it is we come to do. Because at that point, you get that bit right and the sigils will fly off. But if you're trying to tell that scarcity-based story with sigils, you're just going to you're still going to be caught in scarcity. South American recommendations. Okay. Whereabouts in Peru are you going first? So you said medicine for a month in Peru. Is it Iquitos? Is it Upper Amazon? Is it Ucayali? Sacred Valley? You know. Right, a month in Iquitos. All right. The best stuff for but the best stuff for nomading in Peru, well, nomading in South America for my money is in Peru because all the cool Peruvian shit is there, right? Cusco, Sacred Valley, obviously. Arequipa, if you're looking for somebody to just like hang out for a bit, I like Arequipa as just a place to just hang out and be a bit Peruvian. I like Lima. I always have. So obviously you're going to do Sacred Valley, you're going to do Cusco, you're going to do all that kind of stuff. If you're looking at places to spend a bit of time, my favorite place in Ecuador is Cuenca. Really good expat city, a bit dangerous at the moment. And that's because South America is in a state of insane and crazy collapse for a bunch of globalist, terrible reasons. But if you're going to be there that long, I would look at places that you can kind of rest and spend a bit of time and go on sorties from in that direction. So for me, the best place in Ecuador to do that is Cuenca. What else do we want to do in Peru? Well, Island of the Sun. So heading into Bolivia. So Lake Titicaca, Island of the Sun would be incredible. All my favorite stuff is along the Andes, right? So I like Quito at the top and La Paz and the Witches Markets. La Paz is even more dangerous than Cuenca. At the bottom would be it. But if you're doing a month in Iquitos, that's kind of enough medicine. I would do in the Andes some San Pedro, some Huachuma. You can do that in La Paz or just outside of La Paz, but you'll also find that in the Sacred Valley in Cusco. It's like the solar, more masculine counterpart to ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is very jungle, very wet, very female. And Huachuma is from the coastal mountains in the north of Peru, and it's the solar, more heart opening. And if you're going to be there that long, do that in the end. If you're in Iquitos for a month, you're going to end up doing some down there anyway, which is cool. It's not like don't avoid it, right? But it's a masculine solar medicine that I think works better in the end. No, works better is the wrong word. Has a different and powerful resonance in an Andean context. So that would be them. I've never been to Brazil, so I have no Brazilian suggestions necessarily for you. My favorite stuff is the old Inca Empire. It's Quito down to La Paz, basically. That would be it. Yeah, I would live there if the world wasn't ending. Not in La Paz, either in Quito or somewhere in Peru, if the world wasn't doing what it's going to do. But those would be my suggestions. That would be, you're going to have an amazing time, regardless of, well, even when I say regardless of, some of the momentum tunnel stuff, when someone asked about my travel plans for 2024, and I do have them. I'm just waiting to see what some of the turning points in the Armstrong model pick up, in particular next week, and then I'll make some longer term plans. But we know broadly what's going to happen. We know we're barreling into the collapse of the West because of the overextension of tyranny and World War III, and then the end of governments, including US divorce. That's the next 8 years. Cool. I still want to see Cusco, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not so much a despite or pretending that's not going to happen as it is moving into the experience of those years as something that you're doing that the world is also doing. Like, it's that momentum tunnel consent and departure idea of like, what's mine to do? How am I going to be in this moment? Because if you're in South America for all of 2024, you're going to get caught in, I don't mean caught like, there are going to be protests that are going to close down roads, getting in and out of towns for weeks on end. That actually happens in Cuenca. So there's going to be like government collapses, or at least, no, Ecuador is a good example of suspension of government, There's going to be protests. There's going to be roads that are blockaded for protest reasons. It's just part of your journey. It doesn't mean not go. It does mean be situationally aware, which I'm sure you will be. But you're going to be there at the times those things are happening. When we were kids, because Fiji has coups all the time, or did anyway. And we've ended up, because my dad's from the islands, but we've ended up in Fiji doing a coup twice. It's like, this is a weird holiday as kids. And it's just what happened. So I would say that's like a macro thing. Don't expect, because you won't get it, don't expect an Obama era South American adventure. Expect that you are engaging with and relating to South America as it undergoes a necessary but intense transformation to have, in particular, the final third of this century is going to be very good for South America. Like, its time will finally come. One of the ways to understand what's going on at the moment is that the triplicity changeover is the story of the end of the European empires. And South America has more work to do to end those empires. And that doesn't mean like stop speaking Spanish. That means if you look at what Lula's doing in Brazil with rolling out all the World Economic Forum plans of programmable currencies and so on, that's empire, right? It's empire expressed in a air triplicity sense, but that needs to be shaken off. And there's a lot to shake off in South America, Latin America in general, but South America especially. So your experience will be in the context of a Pachacuti, like a major South American transformation. Doesn't mean don't do it, but it does mean roll with what South America is going to do this year. I love Washuma. Yeah, my first drinking many years ago showed me a vision of my ancestors who came from Yucatan, who ultimately went to Great Britain and what is now the USA. Me too. It's I didn't expect to resonate with it as much as I liked, because the first time I had it was in a Ecuadorian medicine retreat, which was very beginner, and I won't mention because I won't recommend it. And it was a Washuma day, and I'm like, oh, I just want more ayahuasca. I wasn't like, you book the package and you get one day ayahuasca, you get one day Washuma, so on. And I wasn't expecting to get as much out of it as I did, and I like it. I still like ayahuasca more, but if I get back to South America this year myself, Washuma is on the list, is further up the list than ayahuasca for me. Suffering a fair bit with practical clumsiness and injury and magical items going missing at the moment. Any advice thinking I might deploy? Just see if that keeps happening, because we just truly had, oh my light. Whoever said my tree went off, it did. You're correct. We had a really ferocious Mercury retrograde. So it might be that. It might be self-correcting. Yeah, I paid for that. I paid quite a bit for that tree. That's annoying. Anyway, hope you don't mind me asking, once you sign up for premium membership, how long does it take for you to be able to access? Is it instantaneous? Yes, it's an automated process. You can ask. That's not a weird question to ask. Assuming a person's already good at reframing, can they experience cross currents by being exposed to other people's old paradigm narratives? Should you stay away from pessimistic friends? Very good question. Yes. Yes, you should. This is a big part of the healing journey that emerged for me as a next step. So last year, having the year before in the jungle, identified autonomic dysregulation and in particular sympathetic upregulation as the core challenge for me, emerging from childhood experiences. When I say my father abused me, I don't mean in like that way, but he was not a pleasant person to be around. And as a result, my home didn't feel like my home. And that's a recipe for sympathetic upregulation, because you're on edge the whole time. And if you're on edge for 4 decades, which is amazing because I'm still only 27, you start to cause long-term damage to your physical body. So that's me and ayahuasca in 2022. And so 2023 is me going, right, autonomic regulation, here we come. No booze, very minimal caffeine, vagal exercises, magic, blah, blah, blah. and it ended up with whole food plant-based, which was the final piece, because I was doing all this other stuff, and this comes back to the keto question. Keto is a sympathetic upregulator. It just is. And actually, some people are parasympathetic dominant, which is why, and in autoimmunity, I don't like that term, but like there are conditions that keto is a very good medical intervention for, are associated with parasympathetic dominance. This is beside the point. But my point is, I got about a third of the way through last year, and I'm like, see, I can't clear off that final 20%, and I've run out of things to take out. I'm not doing booze. I'm not doing caffeine. I'm meditating twice a day. I'm doing body movement, and that, tumbling through errors and mistakes and so on, hospitalizing me in Paraguay so that I could find the material, the information that I needed to complete that process, which was whole food plant-based. And literally within 3 days of it, I'm like, found it. Here's the final piece. I can chalk that goal up to being successful. What happened almost immediately after reaching a state of autonomic regulation was me understanding that there are things that I'm putting up with in my life that, and it's family attitudes and perspectives and so on, that I didn't notice because I was already sympathetically upregulated, that I cannot allow in my life anymore, because they are patterns that upregulate me sympathetically, which will kill me. So yes, reframing and repositioning will bring to your awareness how other people's visions of you in particular are impacting. And we say things like quality of life and so on, and it is that, but we have to think about this magically, like, no, I am not that, and I'm not having that in my life. So you're joking a little bit about it with the haha, but should you stay away from pessimistic friends? You are the sum total of the 7 people you spend the most time with. So you can moderate pessimistic friends by having more optimistic ones. But it's more important that the people that are in your life share a vision of you, or form a sacred container for the flourishing expression of you. And if they don't, that's when they go. It's not quite pessimism, but it is that. So I know you made it as a joking question, like, don't hang around your Debbie Downer friends. Maybe, but no, there's something real and big and even perhaps more horrifying in there. Yeah, but Venice, you're late. Hours late. All right. Thanks, you. Certainly going with eyes wide open. This is mine to do. Exactly. Like, don't not do it. Like, it's part of, well, you know how it is. It's part of everything that's going on. I'm very excited for you. I think it'll be wonderful. Do you have any thoughts on better or worse places to be during? Yes, I do, for us in the USA. So one of the things that I've been working on over my version of the Christmas break, which is working every day. I'm going to, so the member presentations, the geopolitics presentations, have precise timing and places that I think are going to be the best. But there is also a more detailed presentation that comes with a one-on-one consult with me as to everything, where to live, banking setups, all the rest of it. And it's going to be limited to 15 people, and I'll go to members first, that I will be offering. And it's not a member product because I'm doing it in conjunction with other partners. So I can't offer it for the $12. It's going to be like $500. It's quite expensive, but it's also me for an hour with the absolute best that I can, looking at your details with the shamanic consult for where and how you should live. Let me say that better, because I don't want to tell you where and how you should live. It's more like, okay, this is my best unvarnished view of what's going on and how that matches your stuff. So other than like any thoughts on where and how you should live, if you're after the details on that and the timings around it, the last couple of geopolitics presentations will give you more than you're going to be able to get on a Q&A. But there are, let me put it this way, there are some very definite winners and losers coming And in the words of Sam Jackson in Jurassic Park, drop what you're doing and leave now, right? If you're going to make the change, make it. Make it in the first half. Make it before May of 2024. Razul clay and water for shampoo. Interesting. My grandmother used to use a seaweed or local riverweed that foamed in Ireland. So there's a certain local plant of clay near you. See, the clay thing. All right. I'm gonna look at that. I vibe with that. Sigilling for affirmations, 100%. If you're looking to reinvigorate your magical practice after some downtime, why not do sigils for greater discipline? You should, but also you have to fall in love with magic again, which means do sigils for fun shit and not just like vegetable sigils, not just like, which is one of the things I've been talking about for 15 years, in sigil for getting better at sigils, right? For sure. But also fun crap. Like when you find the joy in magic again, you'll do more of it. Does Mercury cause illness? So, you know my rules on, like, because I'm not a germ theorist, but I'm also not quite a terrain theorist. Everything causes everything. So does Mercury retrograde cause illness? Yes, because everything causes everything. Right. What's your opinion about exorcists? Would you compare them to shamans, other spiritual roles, or is it a separate breed? There's a 60% crossover between a classic, a version of an exorcist from the era of the Acts and a couple of centuries afterwards. The word conjurer, to conjure, it was originally the same as exorcist. So if you look at the magical tech that the early Christians, wherever they got it from, have, it is a removal of hostile spirits from people and places. That becomes very Baroque and Catholic over the next 1200 years to become like really cool films with Anthony Hopkins and whatever in it, right? But at its origin point, it looks a lot like what we might call, certainly what I do, but like what we might call shamanism or shamanic healing around the world, which is the removal of entities and patterns that no longer serve. So at an original idea, yes, but there's 1200 years of high drama in one direction, which is super interesting, right? Because it kind of gets back to what Whitley Strieber says about his own early UFO or visitor, I suppose we should be specific, contact experiences, that if he'd watched better science fiction films as a kid, he would have had a better experience and not have the kind of like weird rape experience that he had the first couple of times. And that's probably true. And it's an interesting thing about exorcism, because I love the, various poltergeist cases, classic exorcist cases from the 20th century, like some really scary shit is going on there. But we've been performing exorcism for 1,200 years in the direction building and building, because actually the idea of Satan as this like awesome opposing opponent to God is really more an 11th century development. But we've been heading in that ritual direction for 1,000 years. So it's a little surprised that the spirit world responds in that high Catholic dramatic way. And not so much, although you still get hostile and malevolent spirits in other systems. But at its origin point, like if you look at the early, when we would call exorcists conjurers, like first few centuries of Christianity, so the 400s, 300s, 400s. Yeah, there's a pretty good overlap in terms of what the core tech of early Christianity was. It's the removal of spirits from people and places that no longer serve. Hey, I'm in the Sacred Valley in Peru if you need any info. Huh. Hello, I'm not jealous at all. All right. I have to eat unprocessed food and filtered water, also movement, breath work, and avoid negative people, stress-free. Yeah, it's the dream. All right. So fiber is a really good example of everything causing everything. And it's a really good example of what, it doesn't matter what you have. I mean, it does, but like it actually doesn't. the first 80% or those interventions on a dietary, sunlight, water, sleep, body movement, whatever your version of that is for your own capacities, get that right. Like that's 80% of everything. And then the 20% that's you specific then gets explored with whatever, like acupuncturist, whatever, like the interventionist that you need is at that point. But fibro is a really good example of why it eludes. Why there isn't an off-the-shelf for fibro is because it's a really good example of everything causing everything. And everything that's causing it for you is going to be different to the everything that's causing it for someone else. Yeah. Sorry you're going through that. It's a fucked. I've got some clients with fibro. It's real American, by the way, which tells me how environmental it is, but that doesn't mean it's pleasant. I'm sorry you're going through that. It sucks. Yeah, there are Muslim and Jewish exorcists as well. Exorcism is the removal of spirits is the core Christian tech. Like that's just fact. It doesn't matter if there are Jewish exorcists or Muslim exorcists. How we understand exorcism and how that expresses is that. We use the word exorcist for anyone who removes spirits, but that's the historical reality of the development of magic in the West. So demons need healing too. So this actually might come up. Is this going to come up? Yes, this comes up in the prayer course. It comes up in the. I had a really long conversation with Eshu Kavera during a Kimbanda ceremony in Paraguay a few months ago about why the Kimbanda spirits are interacting with mankind. And it's along that line of they need healing too. Like God doesn't feature heavily in Kimbanda, but I used to talk to Jake Stratton-Kent about this all the time. These spirits are part of their spiritual development is tied to assisting mankind in our, not just spiritual development, but the alleviation of suffering in the physical. And if you look at some of the early vernacular grimoirists, their takes on, we might consider it justifications. Historians would consider it a justification. This is what Jake and I would talk about. So you'll find grimoires saying that, it is, we are providing fallen angels with the opportunity to elevate and return to God by calling them up in a sacred godly ceremony and putting them to work in service of God, which funnily enough is the thing that they want. As in, I don't know, make that woman fall in love with me because God wants her to marry me. There's some bits where it's a bit gross, right? But Eshu Kavera says something similar about why Kimbanda spirits will interact with humans. So this is actually going to come up in the prayer course. It's going to come up in the how prayer works with, let's say, spirits that aren't God or godly. Because it's a magic course. It's not just about, we're not like starting a prayer circle to, I don't know, ban abortion or some shit. Like it's prayer in the context of magic. So, yeah, I think this is so, like, medical mediums are a really good example of, for the people that stuff works for, that's absolutely right. But it doesn't work for everyone. And I don't think he knows why some of his stuff works, because we're all just guessing. This is the other side of everything causes everything. And why I phrased it like, every human being in a body deserves whole, fresh food, unprocessed water, sunlight, body movement. Like that's just, and when we don't have that, our body expresses illness consequently. So that's 80%. This is why I said it this way, right? And then the 20%, I've got clients that are doing things that are completing their healing journey in ways that are they just don't match even what like cutting edge healing would consider between their condition or their expression of symptoms. So one of them, I mean, I'll do a video about this as well, because Kava has been a big part of my autonomic reset. I've got a bunch of clients on Kava for autonomic regulation purposes as well, that's healing a whole bunch of crap that has nothing to do with it, nothing to do with it. And a big part of the book that I will finish my dot trilogy with is on that 20%. Because basically, medical medium, I agree that he seems to think a lot of stuff is Epstein, but like his stuff works for the people it works for, and why it works, I don't think is why it works. And that's the case for anyone. You will, and that's why get that 80% right, and then find the healer or modality that for whatever reason you won't fucking know is the thing that will complete that healing journey for you. And that's, yeah, it's so fucking weird. But it tells you that the other side of everything causes everything is that everything heals everything. We just don't know which everything it is. It's wild. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Hoping to return to the seventh throne is exactly it. And it's why the world has changed so much even since, and it's only about 8 or 9 years ago that Jake and I would be talking for hours a day. Because I did kind of mention, it's almost like thank God we're post-cancel, but this is even pre-cancel. Jake hadn't even been to Greece. Like he just was singularly uninterested in travel. He went to the US a couple of times to do like magical Thelema events and whatever, but he just was not. So here's the Geosophia books, which are all about, so Jake's work might be fairly summarized as looking for the Greek inheritance in modern magic. And consequently, he got a bunch of stuff wrong, like the antiquity of the Verum and so on. But that idea, that quest of looking for the stuff that is Homeric and pre-Homeric in origin, that has survived into how we do magic today, that's still true. And that's a noble quest. And I remember once I was just chatting to him online. I was still working at Yelp. And I was like, so when was the last time you were in Greece? He's like, oh, I've never been. It's like the Catherine Tate French teacher who's like never been to Paris. I'm like, what the fuck? He's like, I'm just not that interested in travel. Like he's read all the books and whatever. So fucking funny. But anyway, coming back to the problematic cancellation stuff, similarly, he became, and I understand why, like obsessed. There was a moment in like 2014 to 2016 where this is, apologies if this sounds insensitive, a bunch of white boys who've never been to Brazil got very into Afro-Brazilian magic. That was like the cool thing on the street for a while there. And Jake was very into that. And it was the same kind of like, oh yeah, because and there's a bunch of reasons why, like there are some grimoire spirits from Europe that actually show up in Kimbanda. And so Jake was really alive really animated by those connections and explored in some areas that probably, with the benefit of coming through a cancellation era and hopefully arriving at a point where it's like, well, cultural sensitivity is good and cancellation is bad. There are bits where some of that misfired, but there are bits that were true. And he would struggle because he kind of wanted academic approval's not the word. He wanted his books to be treated seriously by academics, which is something I've never wanted, and I think is used. I think they're operating in a false paradigm. They could read them. I have a bunch of academics who read my stuff and count as friends. But Jake wanted to be able to say that the reason there are grimoire spirits, certain grimoire spirits, showing up as Eshu in Kimbanda is because the spirits went there. You can't, and that's the correct answer, by the way. But you can't say that in a book like that. You have to be able to note when the blue grimoire, in particular, that was printed in Paris, showed up in Rio, and it's nonsense. But coming back to the Seven Seal thing, like those are the conversations we would have. It's like the stuff that comes out of Kimbanda when they talk to the Eshu looks like this early vernacular grimoire era. Yes, the Paracelsus quote is the origin of everything causes everything, because I just think everything causes everything is funnier. But Paracelsus is it. Yeah. I agree on like, so this is interesting because part of the whole food plant-based regime that I'm currently on, which is very easy in high summer, is 80% raw, which involves a lot of juicing. And it's very difficult in Tasmania to get, we don't have Whole Foods or any of that stuff. I live at the edge of the world. We have supermarkets, and I live in an area that isn't wealthy. So it doesn't have a large organic range. We have farmers markets where the food isn't organic, but they don't use pesticides or anything. And I'm very alive to whether fresh is more important than organic. And with some category exceptions, like you actually just want to Google the foods in the American food system with the most pesticide, and it's berries, generally speaking, like it's strawberries and so on. And in that case, organic is more important than fresh. But by and large, and please don't take this as an excuse to eat from just whatever garbage place, fresh is more important than organic, because if you are getting enough antioxidants and phytonutrients and so on to assist the body in its detoxification process, it's also going to detox the remnants of pesticide and the stuff like we don't have that much pesticide. They're washed. This is the thing. Also, still wash your fucking vegetables, but food is washed as part of the food distribution system, which is why when you get carrots in the supermarket, they're not covered in dirt, right? So one of the things you want to wash off them, though, is the almost like industrial dust that comes from the transportation process from wherever they are. So still wash your vegetables, but by and large, a lot of the pesticides are removed from them. And you can do extra things. If you're in an area that's high pesticide or it's high pesticide foods, you can soak them with, it depends on what you like, a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of bicarb, things that will allow the washing off of certain products. But like whisper it, fresh is more important than organic, with some very important category exceptions. Best is both, and I would buy both if I could, but like we literally, I would just be juicing. What have we got? We've got organic zucchini and organic asparagus when it's in season. There's like 3 or 4 things in my supermarket that are organic. Coming back to the point about how fucking hilarious it is that this is the summer where we're growing the least amount of food, as I'm smashing it through a juicer. But I agree completely. Like, as long as you're aware, as long as you have a model or an understanding of what toxins are used in around food transportation and so on, fresh is more important to the human body than organic. Yeah. Like your personal endless plague season makes sense that it was in fact a rough month. It was. One of the things that I got, like it was my Joan Rivers voice at the beginning of the live stream was probably from yelling over music yesterday. But in mid-December, late December, like in the lead up to Christmas, I just lost my voice and it was like phlegmy and was fine. And then Avalon, my friend up the road, same thing. I go up to Newcastle, my sister-in-law, same thing. Everyone's like, please, I sound terrible, but I'm fine. And yeah, there's, I don't know, voice, mercury, maybe. All right. sounds good. Oregon Wild Harvest, Muscle Relax, Valerian, Skullcap, and hops. We just don't have stuff like that down here. What's this thing about synthetically modified soil microbes? Is that just scale? Oh, fucking, I don't know. It's not good. Like, having just said fresh is better than organic, fresh and organic is the best. I don't know. It's not good, right? Yeah, we can't look. I think about something Catherine Fitz mentions often, which is a story she was told when she went through this journey, litigating with the federal government 20 years ago and being poisoned and realizing she can't use the healthcare system for that reason. And so moves in this healthcare journey. So she's talking to a friend and she's like, I'm looking at what they're putting in our food and I can't understand why we're not all dead yet. And she said, well, you're forgetting one important thing, which is grace. Like, we would all be dead if it wasn't for God. That's two Christians talking. You can frame that however you want. But that's still true. And it's something Alberto says. Because his, like, so my healing teacher, Alberto Violdo, is a medical anthropologist, amongst other things. So he writes his shamanism books, but he also writes his effectively whole food, plant-based, shamanic style dietary interventions. Because whole food, plant-based is a dieta. Like, I'll talk about that eventually. But when he's asked, like, what's the one single best intervention someone listening to or watching this can make when it comes to the food, he says, bless your food. We don't tell me you do that, right? I'm sure some of you, some wags in the chat will say you do. But the best, single biggest uplift, we can argue, and rightly so, because it's important information, organic versus fresh, bless it regardless. If you don't eat a cheeseburger, but if you're eating a McDonald's cheeseburger, bless it. That's incorporating that grace. We're like, we would all be dead by now, were it not for however you want to say that. Well, guys, we've done 2.5 hours. And it's run the gamut. And it's funny, like, after 2.5 hours, my voice is finally ready to talk, unlike the beginning of the show. All right. But good stuff and really good lively chat as per usual. I will do a second, like I said, I'll do a Hekar video separately. That'll probably all happen next week. If you're doing the Sigil a Day project, that's in the Telegram group, or not. Live your best life. And other than that, have a magnificent week. And I have at least a Magical Egypt podcast coming up in the next day or so. Fingers fucking crossed. And have a happy new year and good luck doing all your magic and so on. And yes, see you in the next one.